The doors are closing. Train departing. Please hold on.
Welcome to another new episode of MAX101. Today we will be talking about transit centers. For somebody who rides the MAX, the letters TC probably seem pretty familiar, but to people outside of Portland or have never been on the system before, might seem kind of confusing or random. But it all makes sense. A transit center, TC, is an area where you can transfer to more transit. So it is, for many of them, at least back when they first opened, were served by just buses. So just maybe 3 or 4 different bus lines, which is still true for some transit centers, but many of them now are served by MAX lines, at least one MAX line. And so when the reader board or something says Sunset TC, then that means the next stop is Sunset Transit Center, which means that you can transfer to several different bus lines. Here are all the transit centers served by the MAX as well as buses. Hillsborough Central, Willow Creek, Beaverton Transit Center, Sunset Transit Center, Rose Quarter, Hollywood, Gateway, Park Row Summer, Clackamas Town Center, Gresham Central, North Lombard, and the Portland Transit Mall. There's technically another one on the yellow line, but it's only for C-Tran buses into Vancouver, the Vanport Transit Center. These are all served by at least one MAX line, and in the case of Rose Quarter, Gateway, and Hollywood Transit Center, served by 3 different MAX lines, blue, green, and red. And in the case of Clackamas Town Center, 11 different buses serve it. So if your commute is anywhere in that neighborhood of Clackamas or that area of Portland or whatever, chances are you have been on a bus that originates at the Clackamas Town Center because there's just so many of them. Or maybe your day begins at the Clackamas Town Center. Again, 11 different bus lines. I'll talk about the Portland Transit Mall at a later date, but it's Southwest 5th and 6th Avenues in downtown Portland. Back in the day, it used to just be for buses. And so it was a major bus transfer hotspot. But in 2009, the MAX Green Line opened as well as the yellow, and now the yellow and orange are the same lines. So yeah, it's served by 2 MAX lines on any given street, the green and yellow on 6th Avenue and the green and orange on 5th Avenue. But in between 2 MAX stations, there's bus stops at each of those in-between streets. And so it's basically just one long stretch of 20 plus city blocks where you can transfer to MAX, bus, and at even one point in there, streetcar. There will be a transit center that is currently only served by buses, but it will be getting MAX service. When the Green Line is extended to the Bridgeport Village, you'll notice that there's the Barber Transit Center. So there's a transit center right off of Barber Boulevard, and conveniently, they're running the MAX Green Line tracks on Barber Boulevard. If you go to the Southwest Corridor page, I don't know if I'm going to remember to link that in the description, so disclaimer, I probably won't. Then I'll hopefully provide a link to TriMet's page talking about the Southwest Corridor project, and yeah, it'll tell you about all the station designs and all that stuff. And there's actually even a second transit center on the Green Line that's going to be brand new. It's going to be called the Bridgeport Transit Center, or maybe Bridgeport Village Transit Center. I'm not really sure yet. But currently that doesn't exist. But what they'll do is when they get the Green Line out here, they will be rerouting some buses and bus networks and things, and Bridgeport Village will be the new thing. I'm not really sure if it's going to replace the Tualatin Park and Ride, or because it's not really that far from the Tualatin Park and Ride. So maybe it's just going to replace it in general. I'm not really sure. We'll just have to wait and see how the Green Line works and how buses work. Because there are a couple of buses that serve the Bridgeport Village area, but they just kind of pass through and then they end up somewhere else. So yeah, this will make it more concentrated. This is a transit center. Now there are some other transit centers as well that the MAX does not serve. Some of these are Oregon City Transit Center, Lake Oswego, Washington Square, or Tigard Transit Center. Although the Tigard Transit Center is served by the WES, but the WES doesn't run every day, and it doesn't run all day. It only runs during the rush hour. The WES is a good option for commuters. I mean, it is called a commuter rail after all. But, it's just not very convenient for everybody else, because if I wanted to check out downtown Tigard, my only option is to drive or take bus service, and you know how long bus service takes to get anywhere. There's even been a couple of removed transit centers that are no longer a thing. The best example of this would be the Rockwood Transit Center, which is right outside of Gresham. Now, the MAX still serves it. There's a station called Rockwood East 188th Avenue, but the station and intersection and just that whole area was completely rebuilt in 2010, which is why the Rockwood station looks very nice and updated. Well, yeah, there used to be a transit center there, and they've since removed it. In fact, you can still kind of see the area of it. It's just an area of nothing. Yeah, it's not served by that anymore, but there's still a little bit of evidence that proves my point that it was originally a transit center. Let's see. Take a look at the MAX map, and you'll notice it just literally says Rockwood East 188th. It gives no mention of a transit center, unlike up here at Gateway, where it literally writes out the word transit center, or Park Row Summer Transit Center, whatever. But if you click on Rockwood, that clearly says Rockwood East 188th Avenue Transit Center. That's another thing that I forgot about Rockwood, is on the train reader boards, it even still has the TC on there. They haven't removed that after all these years. Rockwood hasn't been a transit center for quite some time now, so kind of funny to see that all still on there. So that just about covers it for transit centers. If you'd like to learn more about where they all are and all the bus lines that serve it, and to see whether or not you live by one or whatever, I'll provide a link in the description to TriMet's page specifically talking about transit centers and what they are. For now, I think that's going to be it for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.